had a conversation last week that really stuck with me. Someone reached out frustrated about their career trajectory, saying, "My company doesn't invest in my professional development. They don't have mentorship programs. They don't provide clear advancement paths. How am I supposed to grow?" And I found myself thinking, when did we start believing that our growth is someone else's responsibility? But this goes way beyond professional development. Here's what research reveals: 83% of people blame external circumstances for their lack of progress in life. We're outsourcing accountability everywhere, waiting for our companies to develop us, our partners to make us happy, our circumstances to be perfect before we take action. A Harvard study found that people who take full ownership of their outcomes, regardless of the circumstances, are 3 times more likely to achieve their goals and report 40% higher life satisfaction. Yet we're increasingly becoming a culture of people waiting for someone else to fix our problems, create our opportunities, set our standards. The harsh reality? While you're waiting for perfect conditions, self-accountable people are creating their own opportunities in imperfect environments. They're not waiting for someone to take notice of their potential. They're developing it themselves. They're not waiting for circumstances to improve. They're improving despite tough circumstances. I'm not dismissing that some situations are genuinely challenging, but I am questioning something I see everywhere: highly capable people outsourcing their accountability to systems, programs, circumstances, and other people. Are you waiting for someone else to be responsible for your growth, your standards, your outcomes? And if so, what's that really costing you? Hi, I'm Jenny Clark, a conscious leadership expert who spent 2 decades in executive recruiting and talent management, having worked with giants like Google and Spencer Stuart. I discovered that the secret to transformative leadership lies in the 5 dimensions of conscious leadership. And I'm here to help you unlock your full potential. Join me on this channel as we embark on an honest and vulnerable journey together to become the kind of leader that genuinely inspires transformation in your organization. I've got a little career boosting secret for you. Do you want the inside scoop on leadership, plus some juicy tips and hot takes you won't hear anywhere else? I've got a newsletter that's basically your personal career coach in your inbox. Just click on the link below in the description to join in. Oh, and if you're loving this content, I know you are, click that subscribe button. It's like giving me a virtual fist bump, ensuring you won't miss out on any future videos. I remember working with someone who complained constantly about not getting the opportunity she wanted. "My boss doesn't stretch me," she'd say. "This company doesn't invest in people like me." And you know what? She might have been right about some of that. And I do believe the workplace has some responsibility for one's development. And it should be shared by the manager and the person. But this woman was waiting for someone else to solve her career challenges while doing nothing to solve them herself. When we dug deeper, I asked her, what would you do if you were your own boss? How would you develop yourself if no one else was going to do it? The shift in her thinking was immediate. Suddenly, she started seeing possibilities everywhere: online courses, industry associations, informational interviews with people in roles she wanted, side projects that would build the skills she needed. Here's what I've observed over my years in business. There are 2 types of professionals: those who take ownership of their development and those who wait for it to be handed to them. The first group seeks out stretch assignments, finds their own mentors, creates learning opportunities, even in imperfect environments. They set personal standards that often exceed what's expected of them. They ask themselves, what do I need to learn to get where I want to go? And then they figure out a way to learn it. The second group waits. They wait for their manager to identify their development needs. They wait for HR to create the perfect program. They wait for someone to notice their potential and invest in it. And while they're waiting, they're often frustrated, feeling overlooked, undervalued, stuck. But here's what really gets me. The second group isn't necessarily less capable or less ambitious. They've just been conditioned to believe that professional development is something that happens to them rather than something they actively initiate and engage in. I know someone who decided she wanted to be the best project manager in her industry, not just good enough to keep her job. She created her own learning plan, found her own mentors, and held herself to standards that exceeded anything her company required. Guess what happened? She became indispensable, not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because she was committed to excellence for its own sake. Let me paint a picture of what outsourced accountability looks like, because it's often more subtle than we realize. You wait for your annual review to understand how you're performing instead of regularly checking in with yourself and your stakeholders about your impact. Your boss is asking those stakeholders. You expect your manager to identify your blind spots rather than actively seeking feedback from colleagues, clients, or anyone who interacts with you. You rely on your company's training budget to determine what you learn instead of taking ownership of staying current in your field. You wait for someone to offer you a challenging assignment instead of proposing projects that would stretch your own capabilities. But it goes beyond work. You wait for your partner to make you happy instead of taking responsibility for your own fulfillment. You blame your circumstances on your questionable habits instead of owning your choices. You wait for motivation to strike instead of building discipline. You expect others to set boundaries for you instead of establishing your own. Do any of these sound familiar? If so, you're not alone, but you are limiting yourself in ways you might not realize. Here's a hard truth that took me years to accept. Your manager isn't solely responsible for your career. Your company isn't responsible for your growth. Your circumstances aren't responsible for your choices. Your past isn't responsible for your future. You are. The inner work gets interesting here. For some people, outsourcing accountability is actually a way of avoiding failure. If someone else is responsible for your outcomes and you don't succeed, well, it's not really your fault, is it? For others, it's about avoiding the discomfort of not knowing what you don't know. When someone else creates your plan, sets your standards, or defines your success, you don't have to confront your own gaps or limitations. And for some, it's about avoiding the vulnerability of taking full ownership. What's outsourcing your accountability actually costing you? It makes you passive in your own life, hoping someone else cares as much about your success as you do. It limits your growth to what others can see or provide. It makes you dependent on external circumstances that you can't control. It robs you of the confidence that comes from taking charge of your own outcomes. So, how do you create a personal accountability system for your entire life? Start asking yourself, what would I do if I were completely responsible for this outcome? Whether it's your career, relationships, health, or happiness. List 5 specific actions you'd take if no one else was going to fix it. What standards am I letting others set for me? Define your own excellence in work relationships, personal habits. Stop defaulting to what's expected or acceptable. Where am I waiting for perfect conditions instead of creating progress? Identify 3 areas where you're using circumstances as an excuse for inaction. What feedback am I avoiding because it's uncomfortable? Name the conversations you need to have and schedule them this week. What am I hoping someone else will do that I need to do myself? From setting boundaries to pursuing goals, where are you waiting for rescue? The diagnostic question, if no one else was responsible for any aspect of my life starting tomorrow, what would my 90-day action plan look like? Your answer reveals exactly where you've been outsourcing accountability. Look, I'm not suggesting that supportive environments don't matter, they do. But making your outcomes dependent on perfect conditions is like waiting for perfect weather to go for a walk. You'll end up spending a lot of time indoors. Here's the paradox. When you stop depending on others for your growth and happiness, you often become more valuable to them. When you take full responsibility, you become someone others want to work with, be with, and invest in. Because people who don't need to be rescued are the ones worth betting on. The people who thrive in any environment don't need the environment to be perfect. They create their own opportunities, set their own standards, and hold themselves accountable for their own vision of success. Stop waiting. Stop hoping someone else will care about your life as much as you do. Stop depending on systems, people, or circumstances to create your outcomes. You are responsible for your life, whether you're acknowledging it or not. The only question is whether you're going to be intentional about that responsibility or let it happen by default. You're the author of your life story. The question is whether you're going to write it actively or let someone else hold the pen. You ready? Let's get to work. I get it. Taking that first step can feel daunting. I've been there too. But here's the thing. You've got strengths you might not even realize yet. I've put together a free career mapping framework to help you uncover those hidden talents and chart your own path forward. It's not about changing everything overnight. It's about starting to see your potential clearly. Ready to explore? The framework's waiting for you. Just click the link in the description. Your future self will thank you for taking this small but powerful step today.